Hello and welcome to On the Preds with me, your host Alex Doherty of A to Z Sports, and Shaun Smith of On the Forecheck. We are here to recap the Preds week, talk hockey, complain, rant, do all that. Maybe put some things into perspective after just 2 games on the season. But we've got plenty to talk about. We actually have real hockey going on, and Shaun is here to talk about it with me. Shaun, how's it going?
Oh, it's going pretty well. Pretty excited to be talking about real hockey, like you said. Preseason's nice, but at the end of the day, what happens in those games doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. And unfortunately for the Predators, what happened in these 2 games does count because they lost their first 2 games. We're going to talk a lot about that. I don't think. I think most fans are just happy that hockey's back. I don't think too many people are worried right now, but I don't know what your perspective is on that. But I think for the most part, people are just okay with hockey being back. It's not time to panic yet, right? Would you say the same?
There's people who are going to panic because I think, maybe they're new to the sport and they think that you've got to win straight out and that any kind of losing streak, whether it's the first 2 games of the season or what, actually means something. But the way I look at it, and we've got to be really, really realistic about what the team looks like this year. There's a lot of new guys on the team. There's a
Yeah.
lot of guys who are playing together for the first time, a lot of guys who are being switched in and out. And I really think, Alex, a lot of people were like, oh, they put Grimaldi in. They must not have been happy with Tomasino. But I really think they're just seeing what they've got right now. You're going to
Yeah.
see some of those spots rotate on the forward lines and with the defense as well. So I'm
And
not
we'll talk about
shocked.
that as well. We'll talk about that change as well. And
Yeah.
there's a lot. I think it's tough to really find an area the Preds are doing well at right now, but we'll talk about that. Let's go ahead and recap the 2 games from this week. So let's start on Thursday. Smashville was rocking. Everyone was ready to see what a competitive rebuild is really all about. Tomasino gets his debut. UC Saros is in the net. Matthias Ekholm has a contract. Everyone is healthy. Early on, things were really working well. Eli Tolvanen gets the early goal to put the Preds up 1-0. But then this late stretch in the first period kind of dooms the Preds. Back-to-back power play goals, one by Jared McCann, one by Brandon Tanev. And the Preds are down 2-1. And then Roman Josi ties things up from the point on a 5-on-3 power play. But then Alex Winberg is just wide open on the back door and puts the Kraken up 3-2. And, the Preds have a late rally, kind of. And then, I think the Kraken got an empty net goal to make it 4-2. And then I think it was Granlund had a goal to make it 4-3. But at the end of the day, the Preds put themselves into the history books by becoming the first win for the Seattle Kraken in their franchise history. 4-3 was the final. So what were your thoughts on Thursday's home opener?
Well, I think Thursday. First off, let me address this first. You mentioned going in the history books as the first win for the Seattle Kraken, and let's be realistic. Every new team's got to win at some point. Do you remember who the Predators got their first win against by any chance?
The Panthers, I think, right?
I believe it was the Hurricanes.
Was it?
I think so, and I feel like if you look at it in the grand scheme of things, the Hurricanes went on to continue being a hockey team. They even won a Stanley Cup, so it's not the biggest deal in the world to be a franchise's first win opponent when you're out there. I don't think that matters, but
yeah.
It's not ideally what you want, but it was bound to happen sooner or later. And these expansion teams are not the same as they used to be. They're coming in a little bit, better stacked than say the Predators were when they started. So
just real quick, you were correct. It is the Hurricanes. The first game was against the Panthers.
There you go.
I was at that game, but definitely the first win was the 3 nights later against the Carolina Hurricanes. But continue. Go ahead.
It's not that big of a deal. But as for that game specifically, I think, like you said, it was kind of like just a failure to really get going and apply the kind of pressure they needed to apply early on in that game. And I think that's really what doomed them. If you had a full game of what we saw in the third period, I think we're talking about a different start to the season.
Yeah, it was definitely struggle. You know, I think that there's something to the fact that Seattle had already played a game. I think the Predators actually talked about that a little bit. The players did after the game. I don't, you know, you don't want to put too much stock into that because they still were a brand new team and they hadn't played with each other really at all.
Right.
But you know, the first night jitters, and you know, you don't have any chemistry or anything. I saw that a lot. I mean, like there was just the passing was terrible.
Yeah.
They weren't really playing together, and you saw some of that in the second game too. So there was a good bit of that kind of poor chemistry, poor playing together going on in the first game, and some in the second game as well. But you know, that stuff will, you know, they'll gel, and we'll talk more. There are some combinations that have been working okay to start, not great, but have been working okay. Let's talk about Saturday. Just because I want to go ahead and talk about both the games first, and then we'll go back and reassess everything. So on Saturday, there's a couple lineup changes. Of course, they're hosting the Carolina Hurricanes for like the 18th time. You know, they continue to play the Carolina Hurricanes all the time. Couple lineup changes. Rocco Grimaldi is in for Tomasino. Mark Borowiecki is in for Ben Harper. And the Hurricanes get on the board first. Jesper Fast, who is fast, yes. Jets down the left side. Ekholm has to pinch in on the pass to play the pass because he's, you know, he knows he's got Saros back there to in net, and he knows that he needs to prevent the wide open back door. And but Fast beats Saros on the glove side to make it 1-0. Later in the period, Tanner Jeannot, we thought, got locked in the penalty box, but it turns out that he didn't. The clock was just wrong. John Hines, we asked John Hines about that after the game, and he said he had no idea what happened. He thinks that the clock was wrong, but he knows. But if you watch the play, all of the Predators on the bench were furious because Tanner Jeannot was not coming out of the box. I think because the clock said he was supposed to come out of the box, but apparently the clock was wrong.
That's right? That's what I understood, and I was in the arena as a fan yesterday, and first off, it was really exciting to have something to shout about. But one of my favorite parts of being at a hockey game is the shouting, that and the booing. But besides the point, here's the thing: if you recall, after that second penalty, they took a minute to reset both of the clocks, or at least on the scoreboard. So when you were looking at Fang Vision, that penalty disappeared. They reset it for a specific time. I think it was 1 minute and 23 seconds. So I'm assuming that maybe there was some miscommunication between the officials and the board and the officials in the box, and then you ended up with that discrepancy. And, you know, you got to think if it went the other way, Carolina would be shouting right now about him getting out early. So.
Yeah, I think it was kind of much ado about nothing. I think it was just odd when it was happening because the entire bench was just going crazy. But anyways, so the second period was a really good one for the Preds. They really started fighting back against Carolina, getting more physical. They were jumping on loose pucks, which was really good to see. Like they were actually getting to those loose pucks. Ryan Johansen takes a puck from center ice. He gets around Brady Shea and scores on a really nice backhander over Frederik Andersen. That tied the game at 1. So it was 1-1 going into the third, and you felt like the Preds had all the momentum.
Yeah.
And then just a lobbed puck gets over Dante Fabro at center ice. There's a 2-on-1, and Andrei Svechnikov, who's very good, scores to make it 2-1 with about 6 minutes left. And again, they try to, you know, a late rally. They pull UC Saros, and then there's an empty net goal. And the exact same thing happens. Forsberg scores with like 40-something seconds left to make it 3-2 final. Very odd that the first two games ended with a 1-goal deficit in which the goal deficit was an empty netter. That doesn't happen very often. Usually empty netter games are a 2-goal deficit. This case, it was 1. So that's very weird. But so that was the second game. The final was 3-2. Any immediate thoughts on the second game there on Saturday?
immediate thoughts is I'd much rather have Svechnikov scoring against the team than Tanev. So if that's what you've got to work with and you want to look at that as improvement, that's great. But like you said, really an odd start to the season. And at least you do see the team pulling the goalie and scoring some goals, even though it's after an empty net goal. But I think the big thing here, you always hear that argument that if you're going to the statistical argument that if you're going to pull the goalie, you need to pull him sooner. And it seems like in both cases, the Predators can score those goals with the 6-on-5, but they just run out of time to get the second one they need after allowing the empty net goal. So,
yeah. So yeah, it was kind of an interesting first two games. You'd like to obviously have at least one win there, but let's actually hear from Johansen for a second, because this was after the game on Saturday, and I think this tells you a little bit about where he thought the second game was better than the first game. So let's hear that real quick.
John, when you're this early in the season, what's the balance like of making sure you give your lines enough time to gel, but also maybe not leaving them together too long? How do you guys balance that as a coaching staff?
Well, I think you always evaluate every game. I mean, there's a lot of things that go into it. Just what's the chemistry look like? Are they winning shifts? What are their opportunities for and against look like? So I think a lot of it is just trying to make sure that you give guys an opportunity to do it. But if something's really not working, then I think you want to change it. But I also don't think you just want to have a knee-jerk reaction to it. It's also sometimes part of the coaching and working with the players is if you like certain combinations. Maybe something's not going as well as it needs to. Sometimes, you can sit together as a line with one of the coaches and talk about certain things. Maybe they're not playing as connected as they need to be. But we basically do that after every game, and we'll have the film review tomorrow and see where we go on Monday.
So that was actually Johansen talking about. Sorry, I forgot that I put that clip in there. That was Johansen talking about the changes from game one to game two, and kind of how does he balance giving guys enough of a chance to play together. There weren't a ton of changes. It wasn't like it wasn't like a totally new lineup or anything. There were a couple changes. Obviously Grimaldi was in, and then Borowiecki came in
right
on game two. But he's kind of trying to. You have to have a really good balance of like giving guys enough chance to play together and develop some sort of chemistry. But also when something's not working, making a change as quickly as you can. To me, that has got to be one of the hardest parts about being a head coach in this league is how do you balance that? Because if guys have one or two bad shifts in a row, you really can't panic. You can't just say, well, we got to change it up. And this is what fans don't really understand is like guys get 30 seconds, 40 seconds of a shift maybe, and then they get another one maybe like 3 minutes later, and it's all puck context. They might go out there and not even and be stuck in their own zone because it's because the other team that's how the line changed. There's so many things to think about in terms of in a small amount of time, how much is this one particular line or pairing working? So to not panic too much. But at the same time, I do think it was okay to bring Grimaldi in on Saturday because like he has some experience playing well against Carolina. Tomasino was not great in game one. He really struggled. I think Tomasino will get more chances. I think he'll probably play on Tuesday against LA. But so yeah, what do you think? I mean, that to me says Johansen is prepared to give his guys more time to play together than not in order to really see what they can do.
I think a lot about the return to play back. I can't think of the season year because everything's thrown off at this point. But when they went to the bubble and they played in Edmonton, and one of the things I think a lot of people were criticizing Hines for at that point in time was that he continued to ice the same lines even after they weren't winning the games. And one of the things he said was, I'm going to put the players that I think are best suited to the game on the ice every night. And that's always stuck with me because it tells me that he at least is aware that every game is going to be different. You're playing against a different opponent. But at the same time, I think he also knows that randomly throwing someone into a line when they haven't been playing with that line is probably not going to be effective either. And I think that's where you had a lot of frustration with the Laviolette line blender a few seasons ago, where you never knew who was playing where each night, and they never had a chance to gel. Hines is a huge proponent of chemistry and lines having an identity. And so where we knew a couple seasons ago that third line's identity with Nick Bonino, Rocco Grimaldi, and Craig Smith, it's going to have a different identity this go round, because those guys, for the most part, aren't here, and you're looking at different personnel. So where we know what the fourth line looks like, we know who they are and what they're supposed to be, we're really in a transitional year with the third line. Whereas the first and second lines, it's kind of business as usual. Fourth line, it's the same. You're going to see a lot of fluctuation on the third until somebody gels there.
Yeah, definitely transitional is how I would describe that third line, especially because you got Cody Glass in there, new guy. You got Tomasino, new guy, and then Grimaldi, not a new guy, but he's never played with those guys before.
Right.
Same thing with Cousins. The other lines have looked better, but even defensively, if you noticed on Saturday, so Roman Josi had been playing with Alex Carrier, has been playing with Alex Carrier for a while now.
Yeah.
But then at the end of the first, Carrier goes to the box, and so at the beginning of the second, Carrier is in the box. So Josi starts with Dante Fabro, and that's why they started together. But Hines kept it even after after Carrier got out of the box. Josi stuck with Fabro. I think they looked okay together. I think they were fine, but like it's all those things that become dependent on the game situation. When one of your top four defensemen goes into the box, you got to shuffle some things around. And does it make sense to just shuffle them for two shifts and then go back to the way it was? Or if they look okay in those first two shifts together, Josi and Fabro and Ekholm and Myers, I guess it was. No, Ekholm and Carrier. I can't remember. Yeah, Ekholm and Carrier, because it was Myers and Borowiecki. If they look okay, just stay with it. Keep with it. No need to just go back to the way it was in the first period just because. So defensive pairings especially are, those are the most important in terms of like not letting the game get away from you, because if your defensive pairings are not together, things can go bad quickly. And when you have a guy like Roman Josi who can really adapt to anyone's playing style, you're okay. But what happens when you throw Ben Harper out there, when you throw Philip Myers, who just joined this team and is not of the talent level of Roman Josi or Matthias Ekholm. What happens with Mark Borowiecki, who's just coming back from injury? So there's a lot of defensively. I think they've still got to figure out who are their top six defensemen.
Yeah, I think we're pretty certain who several of the top six are. I think you're just going to see that kind of shuffling between. I don't necessarily think that Fabro is going to find his way out of the top six. I just think you're going to see some shuffling between Borowiecki, Benning, and Harper based on need. And I don't know. I'm a big proponent of Matt Benning, especially with the way he seemed to elevate his play toward the end of the season last go round. But in the middle of the game, like you said, you have someone go to the box, you have to make some changes. There's no reason to put things back the way they were if the new thing isn't working very well. You go with what works. But honestly, it doesn't really matter, I think, who you play with Roman Josi. He's going to elevate their game regardless. I don't think I've ever seen him play with anybody that's become a worse player because they've played with Roman Josi. So I know that you can put Fabro in there, and Fabro looks really good. And I think Fabro kind of is a chameleon in that sense, and he kind of goes to the level that he's playing with. So if he's playing with Josi, I think he's a much better player. If he's playing lower with someone who's not as talented as Josi, which is a lot of people aren't as talented as Josi, his play isn't going to be as good. So when you see him make that move, I think that's great. They keep it that way. He plays well. That's awesome. It just makes him a better player. It makes him look better. I feel like Carrier is going to be Carrier regardless of where he's playing.
He's not. Alex Carrier has not looked. Well, it's early. I think he's looked probably very similar to his play last year. I shouldn't jump to conclusions too much. I do not feel like I'm jumping to conclusions by saying that Ben Harper does not need to be in this lineup. I don't think anyone really thinks Ben Harper. It continues to boggle the mind. He would clear waivers if he went to Milwaukee, and he would go to Milwaukee and be a excellent player for Milwaukee in terms of veteran leadership, in terms of like his blue line capability on like a second pairing. It's pretty sad when you talk about how, hey, this guy would be a good second pairing defenseman in Milwaukee, and he's getting minutes in the NHL. Ben Harper's a great guy. I think he seems like such a good dude, but he's just not an NHL player right now. And I think that the moving to Borowiecki on Saturday was more about Harper just didn't get it done. And they do need to play Borowiecki. I mean, they paid the guy. They need to get him in there. But let's move on to talk about the top forward line. So if we're talking about things that are gelling, I would like to focus a little bit on Ryan Johansen and that top line, because I think that they have had a pretty good start. And I actually want to start by showing this goal that Ryan Johansen scored on Saturday, because it highlights a couple of the things that I think he is particularly good at that I don't think anyone else on the Predator, well, I'm sorry, very few other skaters on the Predators can do. So let's take a look at this goal. This is in the second period, is that right? From Saturday against Carolina.
Now Carrier. Predators seem to be rotating the 5 defensemen and maybe spotting Borowiecki. He hasn't played much since last year. Here's a steal by Johansen. Right up the middle. The backhander. Score!
Ryan Johansen. What an individual effort. Look at that read. And he gets on his horse immediately and just overpowers the Carolina Herner, Brady Shea, and shovels it. Watch this, uses his big body position, gets that stick out wide.
Very nice goal. Couple things there, and this is what a lot of people don't think about when they talk about Ryan Johansen. His size and reach made that goal happen, and that is something that not a lot of players can do. I think Philip Forsberg is the only other player forward. Probably player. Maybe Matthias Ekholm could do something like that too. But the only forward on the team, only other forward on the team that can make a goal like that happen, because he had vision to see it. He has the reach to be able to intercept that pass, and the size and the physical ability to be able to, at full speed with the puck, shield off a very good defender in Brady Shea.
Yeah.
And then the puck skills to finish. So people always talk about, Ryan Johansen not shooting enough. I don't think that that's necessarily as much of the issue as it is just not seeing enough plays like that one we just saw. I mean, that right there to me is prototypical Ryan Johansen owning the middle of the ice, making things happen, using his size to get goals, to put pucks in the net.
Yeah, that's cup run Johansen right there.
Yeah.
I think back to something John Hines said before, and this is a while back, when there were a lot of questions around Ryan Johansen's play with the team. And he made the comment that when Ryan Johansen was a willful skater, and that was, I always have to go back and find where he said this. I want to make sure I was misquoting him once as saying a willing skater, but it's a willful skater. When he's a willful skater, he's hard to stop. And I think you really see that in a play like that one. Controlling the center of the ice, and I believe, what did he say? He had those big, long orangutan arms.
Yeah.
That's a real thing. He's got
Ryan
reach.
Johansen said that about himself, right?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah. He was
he's
in a
got
good mood
reach
last night.
Yeah. Well, it's, when he has a good game, he's in a good mood. And that's good.
Yeah.
You want people to feel good because they played well. Yeah, I know there's the big thing where, okay, when you talk to a player after a loss, leadership is, accepting responsibility for, for the loss. But the reality here is he played a good game. He's been playing very well. And I think you like to see that, whether they're winning or losing. That eventually, if they keep playing well and they keep staying positive, which is another big Hines thing, is their mental state. So, if you stay positive, the wins are going to start coming, especially when you're playing like he's playing.
Yeah. Just on the Johansen after the game, when he came in to the press area, he was He seemed like, I mean, look, Ryan Johansen's one of those guys that, like, after games, pre-COVID, when you're in the locker room, is just like kind of must-see television. Like he's always got something funny to say. He's always going to make a comment. He's always going to bug other people in their interviews. He's very, very engaging and funny person. I mean, he's an entertaining guy. So after the game last night, he said he comes in and he looked very happy to see, media there. Like he wasn't blowing smoke either. He looked like, I'm really glad to see you guys because it's been a long year and a half. But anyways, in addition to that, he talked a lot about how good how well the team played in game 2. It's just like, it was unfortunate. It ended up in a loss, but he said that there were so many positives from that game. And I would say that his line was one of those. In just real quick, some advanced stats here. So in 24 even strength minutes, that line, Ryan Johansen and Matt Duchene and Philip Forsberg, 64% shot attempts for, Corsi for, 80% high danger chance for, and a 61% expected goals for. Those are like all-star numbers. Those are top line in the league numbers. Now that's only 24 even strength minutes. That's not going to that will fluctuate. It's not going to be that all year, especially not the high danger chance rate. But they just haven't turned it into many goals. They've only turned it into 1 goal so far in 2 games. However, that is exactly what I expected to see out of the top line. I think that pairing of Johansen, Forsberg, and Duchene is a really, really good one, and I think it's good to see that that's happened so far. That they've actually turned that into really good on ice production.
I think we talked about this a little bit before. You've got a first line that costs a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
And you expect them to play like they cost a lot of money, but you have to think that the motivations for those guys on that line all line up really well for them to be playing at the top of their abilities every night. Forsberg playing for whatever his next contract's going to be. And you've got to assume that Johansen and Duchene feel the pressure of being left exposed in that expansion draft and not being taken. So I think that line's set up for a great year. And like you said, the numbers are great. You're just not seeing it translate into as many goals as you'd want to see. But again, we're talking about a 2-game sample size. There's 80 games left. We've got plenty of time for that to start happening. And I assume it will. I really do. So I'm happy with that line.
Yeah, for sure. And if you have one line that produces, I mean, that's more than they probably had last year. They didn't have they had the Trennan, Sissons, Janot line that was producing in kind of a different way.
Yeah.
But they didn't have anything close to that. I mean, because they had injuries and they had the shortened season with the rushed schedule and everything. I don't. And looking at the other forward lines, we've seen not a great start from them. I would say the Granlund, Tolvanen, Cunnin line at 5-on-5 has not been excellent. Trennan, Sissons, Janot, they always pass the eye test. They're that team, that line that just every single time you watch them, they look fantastic. I mean, everyone loves watching that line. But then you look at their numbers, and their numbers are just like okay. I mean, part of it is they're getting a lot of defensive minutes, and they're going up against their competition's pretty tough sometimes. But I think that you don't mess with that line, at least not yet. Sissons, Janot, Trennan, keep them together, right?
Yeah, they're not doing anything that you'd want to take them off the ice for. Right?
Yeah,
and like you said, I'm not a big numbers guy at all. Just in the simple fact that I don't understand them very well, and sometimes I feel like the weird outcast of the hockey world. But when you say the numbers don't really show that they're lights out, well, like you said, there's a lot of defensive minutes in there. They're playing against some pretty stiff competition sometimes, and that's what they're there for. They're not going to have the same numbers as the first line. Otherwise, they would be the first line, right?
Yeah, I think I just mean like, technically speaking, their shot attempt for share is below 500, which is not, or below 50%, which is not what you want. Expected goals are not that high. For that line, I particularly do not care because they are doing something else out there. they are not only out there, like they're not ignoring the puck. I mean,
No.
Trennan and Janot have really good puck skills. I mean,
Yeah.
in the first 2 games, you saw them do that. You saw them nearly score several times.
Yeah.
But the biggest thing is that they are for the most part playing some pretty high event hockey. Like they're going for the hits, and so if they don't get them, that's kind of going to lead to some chances for the other team. But when they get them, that's going to lead to chances for them because they're going to have a free puck, and then they're going to have usually an odd man rush or at least a 2-on-2 of sorts. So like it's very high event.
Yeah.
And it makes it really fun to watch. The other line that we haven't talked about yet is the one with Cody Glass as center. That to me has been the worst line so far. I'm not really sure what to think about that because Cody Glass has had 2 different wingers on his right side, and then he's got Nick Cousins. I really don't know what you do with that line right now. I mean, to me, that's actually the 4th line. I think the Sissons line is the 3rd one, and then this Glass line is the 4th one. Boy, it's not a good start for Cody Glass in the first 2 games. He's been pretty invisible. I haven't seen too much that has impressed me. It's early, but I don't know that line is really I don't think that line has a clear direction. Like what are they good at? I don't really understand yet.
Yeah, there's not an identity for that 3rd line, and I think there wasn't immediate 4th line identity last year either. It was something that had to develop over time, and it really came through injuries and call-ups. And so I'm not saying that's what needs to happen here. I'm just saying I think they need more time, and there is some personnel shifting that can happen. They've just got to find something that works, and I think that I don't think the season success is pass or fail based on that 3rd line finding an identity as much as I think it's based on the 1st line, playing like they need to play. But
here's what I would say about that. I mean, look, Cody Glass is the guy that they traded to get. They traded Ryan Ellis to get Cody Glass and Philip Myers.
True.
They really do need Cody Glass to be. I mean, he's only 22, right? 22 years old, I think.
Yeah.
They need Cody Glass to be a good player. They can't trade away with someone like Ryan Ellis and not have Cody Glass come in and be at least a 40-point player. I mean, he's got to at least put up some points.
Well, I think he's going to put up points. I don't think you necessarily need to say, like this is the success or failure of the season rests on the shoulders of the 3rd line.
Yeah, sure.
I think you give him some time, and I think they figure some things out. I think, again, he's young, number 1. Number 2, this was his 2nd game with the team. And number 3, his line had different personnel from the 1st game to the 2nd game. It's going to take a minute to find footing with that.
I think I'd like to see him go back to Tomasino. I think the last 2 shifts, if I remember correctly, the last 2 shifts, maybe the last shift and a half with Glass and Tomasino out there, they made some stuff happen. They offensively, they kind of found their legs a little bit. And then of course, Grimaldi comes in on Saturday, but I would like to see him go back to Tomasino. I mean, look, why not put Rocco Grimaldi and Tomasino out there? I mean, I know traditionally speaking, you want a left wing, a more physical. I mean, they're not going to bench Nick Cousins. He's going to play no matter what. So because he's just contractually, they need to have him in there. And he's not. I mean, unless he plays poorly enough to where they have to bench him. Well, right now he's on the power play, and that's another issue. But anyways, I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to see Tomasino go back with Glass and see if they can maybe recapture some magic that they saw at the end of that game on Thursday.
Well, let me ask you a question. At the end of the game on Thursday, those last 2 shifts, wasn't Tolvanen playing on that line with them?
He was. You're right.
Glass, Tomasino. And
right.
that seemed like there was chemistry there. And that's something that they may look at down the road.
So maybe you put Nick Cousins with Granlund and Cunnin instead. Switch them up. That's not a bad idea.
It's not a bad idea. I think, and what does that do to the 2nd line? It gives them a little bit more of a physical edge in that situation because you now have Cousins and Cunnin, who are both not shy at all about physical play.
Especially because the offensive ceiling of Tolvanen, Glass, Tomasino is much, much higher than Granlund, Tolvanen, and Cunnin. Now, not that those guys are bad, but like the man, that could be a huge line. If that line got going, Tolvanen, Glass, and Tomasino, that would be something else.
Well, that's a line that I think if they come together, they build an identity. That's a line you're going to be talking about into the future for a few seasons with this team.
Yeah.
So it's funny that you mentioned they looked good those last two shifts when those were the shifts where Tolvanen joined them. And so I think there's definitely something to that. I don't know that they're necessarily willing at this point to say, hey, Ellie, we're going to put you on the third line with these guys. But I would look for that to happen in the future. I think they may make that change just to see what happens. But I think they're still just shifting. So.
Yeah, speaking of, we were talking about Nick Cousins. I was just going to go ahead and mention this. So if anyone out there wants a good laugh, I tweeted during the game. I mean, as I'm want to do. I mean, I'm tweeting about the Predators as I'm watching the Predators because I write about the Predators. I'm tweeting about Nick Cousins, and I said that Nick Cousins was bad on the power play or something like that. I think I said I said Nick Cousins on the power play is bad or something like that. It was pretty innocuous. It wasn't even that serious of a tweet. But anyways, immediately after the game, Nick Cousins liked my tweet. Now, I did not tag Nick Cousins in the tweet. I tweeted it with his full name. So what that means is that immediately after the game, Nick Cousins went on his phone and searched his own name, found my tweet, and liked it. But I'm confused, and I want to get your opinion on this. He liked that tweet that said that he was bad on the power play. Does he agree with me?
I doubt it. I
don't know. Why would? Because it wasn't like he also didn't block me or like tweet at or quote tweet me or anything like that. So I don't know. It's very confusing to me.
I don't know. It's maybe he was just going through searching his name and just liking whenever he was mentioned. It's entirely possible. I think the thing about I think it's kind of hard in the world of covering sports is that I think for a long time, if you look back through the history of sports coverage, especially, there was really no other interaction between what you saw on the field or on the rink or on the court or whatever. And, maybe those moments after the game or in the locker room. But now you have, so many things that you say are just out there in the general public, and it's easy to search for your own name. It's like say never Google yourself or never do that. But is it all publicity is good publicity, right? I mean, what did Dale Earnhardt say? Even if they're booing, at least they're making noise. So, that's
well, and just in the interest of keeping it objective. Look, I mean, my tweet was not very objective. My tweet was just an opinion tweet. But let's keep it objective for a second. I tweeted about this a few nights ago, or right before. It was a week ago, actually. It was before games even started. In 372 career games, Nick Cousins has 374 power play minutes. Now, since I tweeted that, it's probably like 380 or whatever it is, 375. He has a grand total of 17 power play points. So in all of that time, 17 power play points, 6 goals and 11 assists. That's not very good. That is not a very good rate. That tells me that he's a replacement level or below player on the power play, which is never what you want. You want skill and you want production, because power play is supposed to be where you're supposed to get goals, and he's getting them at a lower level than you would expect a normal power play producer to get. As a comparison, Ellie Tolvanen already has 13 power play points in about 100 minutes. So in like a third of the time, he has almost the same amount of points. Because Ellie Tolvanen is a power play guy. He has the skills to produce on the power play. He's a shooter. He's a good passer. He's a skilled player. Nick Cousins is not that. Now, having said that, Nick Cousins is a fine player. I think he's suited for the penalty kill. He can play some good, tough defensive minutes. He's very good at getting under the skin of other people. But yeah, so anyways, just to keep it objective, he is ostensibly not a good player on the power play. He's not what you want out there. He just doesn't have the skill set or the production to back it up. So,
You have to think too, it's probably not a situation though where he's saying, "Hey coach, put me in."
yeah.
That's the personnel they're deciding to put out on there. He's going to do the best.
That's why I wondered why he liked it. When I first saw that he liked it, my immediate thought was like, I wonder if he agrees with me, because he's like, why am I on the power play? Get me off of this.
I would say this, and let me go back into my very uneventful athletic career and say that when I was in high school, I was on the track and field team, and you're probably looking at me and saying, clearly a sprinter. But no, I was a thrower.
I was guessing hurdles.
I threw the discus and the shot, and that was really
Nice.
all I was there for. And it just so happened that just based on where I went to high school and how small it was and everything, was that the middle school team and the high school team always had meets at the same time and things like that. Our middle school team, this is when I was a junior in high school, our middle school team only had 3 runners, and they wanted to enter a relay. And so they said, "Hey, can you be the 4th man on this relay?" I was like, I'm here to throw things. I'm not fast. I'm not even in really good shape, and you're going to put me out there running. And sure enough, I end up, running a quarter mile on this track with the relay team. And it was just beyond a nightmare for me, and I hated every minute of it. But I'm sure someone had tweeted and said, like, Shaun Smith on the 4-man 1 mile relay is
not belong.
bad. I would go like, you got it.
Yeah,
you figured it out. So
I don't exactly.
know.
And it could be that I'm not too worried about it, but I just thought it was funny that the other thing that's funny about it is that it happened immediately after the game. I mean, the guy's basically still got his gear on, and he's in the locker room. But anyways, having said all that, the special teams has not been very good either. Oh, actually, the penalty kill was better on Saturday. Power play looks about the same. They got the 1 power play goal that was on a 5-on-3. I mean, you would expect that, but then outside of that, the power play just does not look any different than the last few years. So that's just going to keep happening, I guess. But
I noticed a lot of dump ins on the power play, and that's
yeah. Carry-ins are bad. They cannot handle the pressure well. They try to do some high-low stuff where they get someone on a bumper play type, or they get some east-west stuff where they get the 2 wings, either Forsberg or Tolvanen, to get an open look, but they have not really gotten anything of quality so far. So, anyways, we are about done with today's show, but let's talk real quick about the week ahead. So Tuesday, the Predators played the Los Angeles Kings. That is the Victor Arvidsson Revenge Tour. He scored his first goal last night, by the way, for the Kings on the power play, I think. And so Tuesday, Victor Arvidsson returns. Should be, I would be willing to bet there's a tribute video of some sort about Victor Arvidsson. Hope nothing happens and he's able to play in that game. I would assume he's able to play. So that'll be fun. And then Thursday, the New York Rangers come to town. Both those are 7 p.m. starts. And then Saturday, they go to Winnipeg. So Saturday, the Predators go to Winnipeg for the first time in 2 years, feels like. And that'll be a good game there. 6 p.m. start on that one. So 3 big games this week. I think all 3 of these games are winnable. Los Angeles, very similar to the Predators in that they're kind of rebuilding some stuff. Same thing with the Rangers. They have some high-profile picks. They got a Norris-winning defenseman back there, but you feel like you can beat the Rangers. And the Jets are your competition in the Central. So 3 big games. Any thoughts on how this turns out this week?
I think they're all winnable games. Honestly, I'm very excited about the return of Victor Arvidsson. I've always liked Victor Arvidsson, so I'm happy to see him back. It's very odd for me to not see him out there, honestly. So I think I'm curious to see, I hope there's no animosity. I don't think there is, but I hope everything goes well. I hope, like you said, I hope he's able to play. I don't think anything happens, but even, we had the surprise yesterday of Connor Ingram being called up to Nashville due to Riddick going on the COVID protocol. So things happen in this day and age with stuff that are kind of beyond anybody's control. So I assume he'll be there, and I'm excited to see him play. I'll be covering that one in person. So I'm
We
glad
did
I
have
get to
that
see him.
that is a good point. We should bring that up. The David Riddick was put on COVID protocol.
Yeah.
However, remember, we already know that 100% of the Predators team is vaccinated. So
Yeah.
I imagine that means he probably will be back on Tuesday, because he probably it might have been a contact tracing thing, or maybe he just had a positive test and then he'll get a negative one to get back. But anyways, yes, that did happen as well. So I don't expect too many roster changes up through Tuesday. I think we'll probably see something similar to Thursday or Saturday.
Yeah,
Los Angeles.
I'm hoping that we're seeing Tomasino again, and I'd really like to see Tolvanen playing with he and Glass. I'm surprised though, Alex. Really, you pulled some highlights, you pulled some clips, but I didn't think that you would pass on the Bash Brothers hit on Tony D'Angelo. I thought that would be a moment of celebration today. But
I didn't see. Wait, are you talking about? I think I might have seen this. I'm not sure. What happened?
Jeannot and Trennan smashed D'Angelo.
Oh, okay.
At the same time, it was a beautiful hit. It was just poetic justice that it was D'Angelo.
I must have missed that. We can save it for the next time they play Carolina as a preview.
Yeah, go back and find that one. It was a thing of beauty. It happened right in front of where we were sitting too. The kids who were huge Mighty Ducks movie fans they called it out immediately, like, "Oh, they just did the Bash Brothers." And I'm like, it was great. So it was an enjoyable.
You can check out all of our hockey coverage at A2ZSportsNashville.com, and then also go to ontheforecheck.com, read Shaun and all of his friends at OTF to see what they're talking about the Predators as well. You can follow me on Twitter at AlexDarty1. Follow Shaun on Twitter at SCSOTF. Any final thoughts before we conclude?
Not really. I'm glad we're back in real hockey. I'm happy to be talking about games that matter, and hopefully everyone out there listening is enjoying what we have to say.
That's right. All right. See everyone next week.